If I'm being honest, most reels under $40 just belong in the trash can. I don't even think they should be made. But in today's video, we're going to go over the Shimano Sienna and why this reel does not fit that bill. So let's get into it. Now, before I cover the features and my overall thoughts on this reel, let's just go over the specs on the one that I have in my hands right here. So this guy is the SN3000FG. This is the 5.0 to 1 gear ratio. The max drag coming in at 19 pounds. This has 3+1 for bearings. The weight is 8.8 ounces. The line capacity is 170 yards of 8-pound test. And the MSRP is coming in at $34.99. However, this may change. There's a lot of weird things going on with tariffs and price adjustments at the moment. Now, the time of filming this video, this reel's coming in at 35 bucks, so there's not going to be a whole ton as far as features go, but there are a couple on Shimano's website, which I will list for you guys right now. The ones that stuck out to me the most were the ARC spool, or the ARC spool, the G-free body, and the propulsion line management system. Now, as for looks, Shimano really went with the red theme on this reel. The whole entire spool is pretty much red with a little bit of black accent covering the actual Sienna logo on this one. There is some silver accents throughout the reel, particularly in the handle and some of the bail components. And then you also have a little bit on the very bottom of the reel. And then everything else is pretty much black. So it looks a pretty good looking reel. I mean, especially considering the price, you know, some of those cheaper reels can just absolutely look like garbage. But I really do like the design of this reel. I think it came out very well. I think Shimano did a good job on looks for this. Now, as for versatility and function, Shimano made this in a whole bunch of different sizes. So those sizes are going to be the 500, 1000, 2000, 2500, 2500 HG, 3000, and 4000. So you got a whole bunch of different sizes there to cover a whole bunch of different species. Now, I wouldn't use this for saltwater. I actually wouldn't even eat something salty near this thing. I bet it's going to get just absolutely wrecked on the internal components. Now, if you are needing just a cheap reel to get out for a local trip to the beach or something, say you're vacationing, you want something cheap to use, I'm sure it's going to work for your whole trip no matter what, but I don't see this doing a great job at protecting the core internals from any kind of saltwater use. So I would pretty much just stick to freshwater with this guy. Now, because you have that 3000 and 4000 size in there, you are getting some of your higher, line capacity fish. You know, you could technically use that 4000 for a cheap steelhead setup. You could use it for catfish if you'd like. Obviously, your 2s and 2500s is going to be great for all-around bass. You do have that 500 and 1000 in there, so it's great for trout. And honestly, that 500, if you guys are needing like a second setup on, on the ice, if you guys want, like, say if you, for instance, the state I live in, we can run up to 5 rods per person while ice fishing. So for an extra jaw jacker setup and a cheap little reel to throw on one of those would be a great option instead of spending a bunch of money on reels that could get pulled into the ice, right? So I think that's a great option for that. I think Shimano's it seems like they're not fully really investing in those 500 size reels anymore, so it's nice to know that we still have a couple options throughout there. But for the most part, I would say that 1000 to 2500 is going to be the use that most of you, the sizes that most of you are going to want. Now, as for durability and overall build quality, I think the reel feels great considering the price. At the time I was going to film this video, it was going to be a $30 reel. Shimano did just have some price increases for those of you that are watching this video anytime relative to when I filmed this and when I put it on the channel. At the time of filming, or at the time of researching, this reel was 30 bucks. It's still 35, so the price, increase wasn't huge with this one, but man, for 35 bucks, I feel like I feel like it's built pretty dang well considering that price. I do think it's going to last you for all of your average fishing trips. I don't think it's just going to break on you all, randomly all of a sudden. However, this reel hasn't been tested, at least from my knowledge and from other people that I know. This reel hasn't been really banged up by anyone that I know. I just don't know a lot of people that fish, sub $50 reels. So I do think this reel needs further testing to say that it's just absolutely bomb-proof, but for the money, I think it's going to hold up for you just fine. This is the same thing on the ergonomics and overall feel of the reel. I mean, you know, it doesn't feel phenomenal. If I'm being honest with you, it doesn't feel like something just absolutely insane in your hands. But it shouldn't. It's a $35 reel. Like, it's not going to be anything extremely insane. It is 8.8 ounces, so it is a little bit on the heavier side, at least for the 3000. I feel like a lot of reels, especially like your Daiwa reels in this same kind of, you know, little bit more expensive price range, are like cutting that thing out by like 3 ounces on that. But overall, it still feels pretty decent in your hands. I do like after the 3000 size, they go to the T-knobs. It's just a little bit easier to, you know, it's a little more comfortable to reel in your hand. And it is pretty smooth. For a $35 reel, it is definitely one of the smoother reels in this, you know, in this price range for sure. There is a lot of them that just feel like absolute junk, and this one doesn't feel like absolute junk, so I would vote that a plus for this reel. Now, as for casting, this reel doesn't include any of the features that are in some of Shimano's higher end reels, like that anti-twist fin, you know, some of your, you know, how your line lays on the reel, the slow oscillation, you know, it doesn't have any of those features, so it is not going to cast as well as a lot of those reels on that higher end. But I think it's going to do a great job for the average fisherman and what, you know, what you guys need it to do. As long as you spool that thing up. I know I preach this on every video, but I believe it's very important after doing a lot of testing on this, you know, not on camera, right? There's a lot of testing behind having it spooled correctly and how it affects your casts, especially with lighter lures. So just make sure that line is filled up, you know, right almost to the end, but not fully, you know, right up to that edge right there. And I think you're going to be fine on casting. You're not going to have any issues. Now, as for price point, this reel obviously covers a market that pretty much is open to anyone. I mean, if you're wanting to get into fishing and you saw the $35 tag on this reel and said, oof, that's too much, I would suggest you just not get into fishing for a while and just save your money, because anything after this is going to be it's going to be such a terrible experience that you're actually going to never want to fish again, right? And it's literally going to take your passion away from fishing and the outdoors when you use that bad of gear, right? I would say this is the very lowest point that you should go as far as spending, you know, money full price on fishing gear. I'm sure there's some used stuff out there you can find, you know, that's around this price, but for nicer gear. But for as far as new spinning reels go, I wouldn't go any lower than this. And I think it's a great price point for those of you wanting to get into fishing. You just don't know how much you want to spend yet. You know, you could pair this guy up if you're wanting to go catch trout. Pair this guy up in the 1000 size with an Akuma Salilo rod. You're talking like, I mean, it's probably sub $70 for that setup. And, you know, go out there and fish and see if you like it. If you end up liking it, then get another, you know, get a nicer, higher quality setup that you're going to like a lot more. But this would be like the lowest I would go price-wise as far as, you know, an entry-level reel. This would be a great option for those of you that are trying to make a sub $100 rod and reel without it just being absolute garbage. I think this would be very high up in your choices of a reel to pair with a cheap rod with. I think it's going to do a great job for that. Now let's go over the pros and cons of this reel right here. Now keep in mind, my pros and cons are changed a little bit. I'm not going to be including price under the pros and cons anymore. I'm actually going to make my pros and cons list based off of the price, if that makes sense. I feel like that's a little more fair way to judge these reels. So this is kind of the first review. I'm officially starting this based on that $35 price point. As for pros, I think this reel looks great. There's a lot of cheap reels that don't look this sleek. Of course, I expect that from Shimano. I mean, they make just the best looking gear in my opinion, so I expect it from them. They still performed. Lots of different sizes. You get a huge diverse group of reels you can use for almost any freshwater type of fishing. It also feels great. You know, for that price point, it feels good in your hands. I feel like I could fish this, you know, for a decent part of my day and be okay with that, you know, and it's going to make my trip enjoyable and catch me some fish. As for cons, it does lack features. It lacks a lot of features. It is very simple and plain. The other thing is it's heavy, right? It's almost coming in at 9 ounces for the reel I have right here, which there's a lot, there's quite a few Daiwa reels, a little bit more expensive than this that, you know, can cut that weight down a lot. So that would be another con I'd have on this reel. So for the price of 35 bucks, I would rate this reel an 8 out of 10. I think if the price was back down to that $29.99 mark, I think you could give this an 8.5 or a 9 out of 10. I do think for the money, this is one of the best reels on the market for that price range and category. I would say if you're willing to just spend a little bit more money, you're going to find a lot of better reels than this. Some examples are going to be the Daiwa Revros, the Daiwa Regal, the Shimano Sedona, right? There's probably, I could probably make a list of like 4 or 5 reels that you could spend an extra 30 to 20 to 40 bucks on over this, and you are getting a reel that would run laps around this. But that being said, if you just got 35 bucks, it's a great choice. I would 100% recommend this reel. Now, that rod that we talked about earlier, the Okuma Solilo, if you guys want to see a review on that rod, I will put it right here. If you guys want to see that Daiwa Revros, which I talked about earlier, I will put that reel right here for you guys. So hopefully you guys got a kick out of today's episode. Hopefully you learned something. We'll see you guys next time on Humbug Videos.